Hey everyone, thanks for joining me on the Slice of Finance podcast. I'm your host, Jared Taylor. Joining me today is the founder and CEO of FlowCog Canvas, Adam Tzagournis. Adam, how's it going?
Great. Thanks for having me on, Jared. Really appreciate it.
I'm excited. So a lot of people initially know me from like a lot of the healthcare podcasts we do, and we started digging into the finance side of things. And that's what I actually went to school for. But what's interesting is you're the second LinkedIn top voice that we've had on here. Just on the finance side. So it's pretty cool. Excited to dig into some topics with you here today. Let's first dig into first give us kind of you run up to someone you don't know on the street. They ask you what you do. What do you tell them about FlowCog Canvas?
Basically, it's a tool to help you not run out of money and to make better decisions with your money, right? With your business's money, that is. And really, you see a lot of business owners shy away from finance and accounting because it's intimidating, it's scary, they don't have the background in it. And what that leads to is they sweep some of these problems under the rug until it becomes unavoidable and it becomes a real issue, right? Either your burn rate is out of control, the amount of money that you're spending each month far exceeds the amount that it should. Maybe you're not thinking about your revenue growth rate kind of in line with the number of months you have remaining until you need to raise another round of funding. There's so many different dimensions of this problem of finance and accounting for business owners and for founders. And it doesn't always manifest itself to folks up front.
So you've seen, you have a unique background. So you're a CPA. You've taken that background, what you've seen in the space, and then you're a CPA who also codes, right?
Yeah. So I'm a full stack developer as well, and it's kind of a happy marriage of the kind of subject matter expertise in accounting and finance and understanding and having worked in those roles for so long and really absorbing all of the kind of footfalls that you can make and all of the kind of benefits that you can bring to a business too when you have this kind of perspective on the business, right? When you understand from start to finish the dollars coming into the business and the dollars going out. So being able to kind of embed that into a software product and really focus on the problem at hand for the user, right? The business owner that is not a Microsoft Excel expert, is not a finance and accounting expert, but it's still very important for them to look at their numbers. How do they do that, right? How often do they do that? So can I build a tool that makes it easier for them to kind of absorb that information and make sense of it, right? That's really the goal here, is to give business owners a tool that they can really come back to on a frequent basis to help them make better decisions. This is not a kind of do it once and you're done with it and only do it, once every year during tax season, you plan with your tax accountant, something like that, which is what a surprising amount of founders and business owners do. Instead, the idea would be, okay, we're looking at different what if scenarios along the way and trying to understand, are we making the right decisions with our money? What if we add a new product to the product mix? What does that do? What are the unit economics involved? At what point in the future do we need to raise money? How is that going to accelerate growth?
So, I mean, that being said, like, I guess from a financial perspective, what's one of the biggest financial mistakes that you see a lot of these startups making today?
Yeah. So when I give talks to founders and speak with roundtables and accelerators and everything, the big one that I always come back to, and I see this over and over, is most folks think of burn rate as how many months of runway you have left based on the most recent month of spend. So let's say you have $100,000 in your bank account and you have a net loss in terms of cash each month of $10,000. Most folks would take the first number, divide it by the second, say, great, we have 10 months remaining, which seems reasonable. That's kind of how everyone does it in the industry. And I think it's a horrible mistake for many reasons. The problem here is that your previous months of cash burn are not going to be representative, especially in a growing startup, of your future burn, right? You may have a big conference coming up where you're doing a lot of marketing spend at. You may be making a new hire in the next few months, right? So the problem that inevitably happens is you get a founder that thinks they have 10 months of cash runway left, when in reality, 30 days later, they realize they only have 5 or 6 months left. And it's like, well, that number should have gone from 10 to 9, but it went from 10 to 5. What happened there? And it's because when you don't think of projections as the tool for this exercise, you just think of using your historical data, your previous months of burn. You run into the issue of underestimating your future burn. And so it's kind of brings into play the idea of, okay, fine, we can understand then why projections are important to make sure you don't run out of money. But how do I do them? I'm never going to be perfect with them. No one has a crystal ball. They are, it's really hard to get right. I would say that that's totally the wrong approach and the wrong way to think about projections. I would throw that out entirely, right? The goal is not to be perfect at all. That's really not the goal here. The goal with projections is to take the data that you have and take your future plans for the business. If you know that you're going to make new hires because you're releasing a new piece of software or a new physical product, being able to see the effects of those assumptions and test the feasibility of that financial plan and say, okay, if given these assumptions, we make 3 or 4 new hires to build out this piece of software, what does that look like from a cash flow perspective for the next 6 months, for the next 12 months? How much does that change our burn each month? How much do we expect that to accelerate our revenue, right? And again, even if you don't have a perfect forecast of that, the idea would be, okay, this is not even worth it unless it hits this amount of revenue, because we wouldn't even be able to cover expenses for this, right? Or maybe you say, hey, in the short run, the revenue doesn't outpace expenses, and that's okay. We have enough money in the bank to support burning through extra money, because we know that in the long run, this is the right trade-off for our business, is having this new product segment of customers to sell to, right? So being able to use projections and these what if scenarios as a tool for decision making is really the angle that I take, instead of, hey, what is our forecast? How perfect can we get it? A lot of times that ends up not being very useful.
So in a way, it's kind of, you could term it like forward-looking burn.
Yeah, you could term it as forward-looking burn. You could say that, given our strategy, for instance, if you're pitching to an investor, or even if you're trying to make a decision with your co-founders or the rest of your employees and say, hey, we're going this route in terms of our go-to-market strategy, in terms of our product roadmap. This is what our financials look like. That means that we know we need to raise money on XYZ future date. That means we know that we're going to have a little bit higher burn these next few months until the revenue from the new product starts kicking in. So those are the kind of dimensions that you can start to look at burn when you take into account your forward-looking plans, as opposed to just the yesterday's newspaper, is what I like to call it, right? The past is only so useful, can only get you so far.
Yeah, it's what's it called? I like it. Kind of reminds me, not the same thing, but like when everyone would talk about like price to earnings ratio, but in many cases, like you wanted to look at that forward price to earnings, because we hear a lot with NVIDIA right now, right? Where people are like, I mean, it is obviously super highly priced, the stock price, but when you look at the forward PE, it's actually still a little bit better than, when you look at that astronomical PE ratio that they have. I really like, so, I signed up for the platform to take a look before we had this interview. And you and I were kind of laughing about this little thing that I complimented you on early on, and people will see this when they go on. But when people sign up and they see this, you did a great job of even the little things in terms of having the microphone where if someone doesn't want to type what their business does to help build like you're able to talk to it. And you and I were laughing about this, that probably before I mean, were you going to put a microphone on just to get information from someone? Like, I know we text with microphone, right? But you would never do that in an app. So let's talk a little bit about how Cogflow Canvas is leveraging AI to help put these models together and give that snapshot to people. Because I think our audience would love to hear that.
Yeah, sure. So the big thing for me as a founder is making sure that folks get value out of the product, right? And if someone logs in and this product looks exactly like Microsoft Excel and you have to start from scratch and there are no guardrails or guidelines or anything, even if they've paid me, I haven't actually achieved anything. No one is better off from this interaction, right? In other words, UX in general, if it's not there, you haven't delivered a product, right? The UX becomes everything with a tool like this, because in order to keep folks engaged and get value out of it, you have to give them a tool that's easy enough to use, right? And so then that brings into this question of, okay, how quickly can we get the user, this notion of time to value, how quickly can we get the user really good amount of value relative to what they paid for? So when they go through the onboarding flow, the idea would be, okay, there's a microphone where you can now speak into the tool, into the piece of software, and you can have AI take what you said and automatically generate projections based off of that, right? So again, I've seen a lot of products out there that kind of bolt on AI in the form of a chatbot or something where it doesn't oftentimes make sense. Really, the way I kind of approach using AI to help users is, okay, what problem are they trying to solve already? How does AI naturally fit into that workflow, right? So for instance, the little microphone that you mentioned, right? That would have been a nightmare to implement as a feature for me as a programmer. 24 months ago, I don't even know how I would approach it, right? The results would be awful. It wouldn't be helpful. But now that's a really easy thing to do with the prevalence of AI, or relatively easy. And so the idea then is, how does that get the user to value quicker than they would arrive there without it? And so it lets them speak into it. Then AI takes it from there and synthesizes, okay, this is what the user said. Let's build the projections based off of that. And, it also syncs with QuickBooks and everything. So it can pull in existing QuickBooks or Xero or Puzzle data and make sense of it from there to kind of inform the forward-looking projections. But again, that is also in service, those integrations and kind of AI synthesizing all of that raw data. That's in service of the user and the end goal of getting them clarity on their finances, on their business finances.
So, as I mentioned to you, Adam, I was just messing around with it just to have some more background before our conversation, but I had no idea with what I actually even tried to fool it a bit, right? Because I also talked about like what some future streams will be to see if it would actually add it to the model. Because sometimes, right, you say future and then AI will ignore that if that wasn't the core focus. And it put in those additional streams. But just kind of how you laid out, I'm not going to give away too much. It's like a movie. Like, everyone that's listening, go sign up and go check it out. But I think you did a really good job with the UX. And it's definitely because you have that unique background that most people wouldn't have, a CPA and also a full stack developer. I mean, I don't know of many people that have that type of background. Like, imagine how useful it would be for like the lawyers and other industry professionals to have that same background. What's next for FlowCog that really excites you?
Yeah, so there are a few kind of big announcements that I need to hold off on for now in terms of really enriching the product and making it more useful for folks. I did just release a kind of, and the naming of this feature was difficult for me, but I decided to call it the explain in plain English feature, where once you have your projections in the tool, right? You have your historical data if you've imported it. If not, that's okay too. You can just build out the projections. You can have AI help, or it is a no-code tool. You can kind of drag and drop these blocks onto this canvas to automatically build your financial statements. The feature of explain in plain English takes all that data, synthesizes it, uses AI to basically play it back to you in an English format. So for folks that don't want to sift through the graphs and don't want to sift through the financial statements themselves, you can also get an explanation in plain English. And then there's even an experimental feature on, okay, now given my business description that I've typed or spoken into the product, tell me how I can improve my business in terms of the projections going forward. So that part, again, still experimental, still tweaking it, but really interesting results so far. And I think that that's kind of the future of using AI in products like this is, can you give the user something back that they didn't put into the product, right? So whether that's effort or time or insight, the kind of end goal of the individual components coming together to being, the sum of the parts, the whole is greater than that. The idea is to really get the user this kind of unique set of value that they didn't have to put in a ton of effort to kind of build up, right? That's kind of the idea behind making it a no-code tool, no formula writing like in Microsoft Excel or anything like that. Keeping it simple for the user, giving them the ability to layer in complexity as they go, but really trying to get them to value as quickly as possible.
I love it. I love how passionate you are about this too. And I look forward to future conversations. Please do let us know whenever there's updates. We'll put something out to let everyone know as well. Wishing you the best of luck. And thank you again so much for joining me on the podcast here today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jared. Really appreciate it.